We got a big update in the lawsuit between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. Let's talk about it right now. Welcome back, everyone. As I mentioned, we got a big update in the lawsuit between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. The Mountain West has filed a motion to dismiss the charges that the Pac-12 is bringing against them with the poaching penalties. The Pac-12 is trying to get those poaching penalties removed, and the Mountain West filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit, but the judge has denied it. So let's talk about what that means. All right, some important things to mention first is that there was nothing in the lawsuit that was dismissed. Sometimes with these lawsuits, you'll have like some charges that are dismissed and others that aren't, but in this one, nothing was dismissed. And just so y'all know, that doesn't mean that everything's guaranteed to go to court at this point and that the Pac-12 is going to win, but that does mean there's enough legal standing bill to proceed to the next step in the legal process with these. So the next step with this is discovery, and both sides can start bringing the evidence that they have to the table, and we can kind of start seeing what substance each side has, and that can take quite a while. And it'll be interesting to see what happens during discovery. That's usually where things start to get really juicy. We've seen that before with like the ACC, where all of a sudden you are thinking one thing, then you find out through discovery it's not what you thought at all. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes out with discovery between these, especially with the way it happened, with the way that the teams left, and especially with Utah State leaving a little later. So Utah State may have some information that the other schools don't. So that'll be the next up is discovery. And something to note here as well is the parties can still settle at any time. They can settle before they get to discovery, during discovery, or after discovery if there's things coming out they don't like, or they find out that another side has something that they don't want to come to light, they can settle. And so that's kind of the next step in the legal process. That can take a very long time. That can take a year or even more, like maybe even up to 18 months, especially with antitrust lawsuits. I was reading that they can take a little bit longer than other ones with discovery because you have to do a lot more analysis and a lot more of like impact like economically on why it would be an antitrust. So that's the next steps with the legal proceedings with this. So this definitely doesn't mean it's like the end for the Mountain West or anything, or that the Pac-12 has won. It just means that we're going to the next step. But what this does mean is that the pressure is heating up for both sides. So I just want to talk about what's at stake for both sides. So with the Pac-12, they do have a war chest of money that they have, and they've been spending it like no one's business, but they do have a little bit of cash to fall back on with all this stuff. And so if for some reason there's like no settlement, Pac-12 just straight out loses the court case, like stuff like that, they do have cash to fall back on. Now whether there's enough there, we will see at that point, but they do have something to start with. And the biggest impact this have with them, if they lost or were just able to settle for a little less than what the poaching penalties are right now, is it would just stunt their growth. Like I feel like they're in a pretty good spot, be able to be in a conference where they're at, and they'll be able to get a decent media deal. Like it's definitely not going to be anywhere near like the Big 12 or ACC or anything like that, but it'll be more than they're currently getting, maybe even double what they're currently getting in the Mountain West, and maybe even more than that. So with the Pac-12, I feel like it would just kind of like slow their growth a little bit, because if they have a little bit more of that cash to spend, they can grow a little bit quicker. Maybe they can pry away some other schools that they're looking for with helping them out with like travel expenses or exit fees. Or if that doesn't work, there's a lot of options you can do with money, So it's just going to stunt their growth if they're not able to win or be able to settle for a good amount. Now, where the pressure really is with the Mountain West. I feel like they have to play this very carefully if they want to be able to come out on top with this, because with this, they don't have this big cash of money that they're sitting on right now. They're relying on these poaching penalties and these exit fees to be able to pay for the things that they've promised. Stuff with like NIU coming over, with UNLV and Air Force being the flagship programs, trying to keep them there. They're going to pay them quite a bit of money. And something just to note too with the NIU stuff, there was a story leaked today about NIU and how much Mountain West is paying them. I'm going to do a video about that tomorrow. That is just something to think about with this and the timing of that being leaked. So just think about that, and I'll release a video on that tomorrow and what that could mean for the Mountain West, whether that's a good thing or bad thing. But going back to how this impacts the Mountain West, if let's just say worst case scenario, the Mountain West just flat out loses, they don't get any of the poaching penalties, maybe the exit fees, they get some exit fees. Like obviously worst case scenario would be no exit fees at all, but we'll just say no poaching penalties and some exit fees. Then they're in a really bad spot because they've promised a lot of money to some of these different schools. schools, and they're going to have to really rely on their media deal to be a bigger number than it is now to be able to try and pull out of this. But it could lead up to like UNLV and Air Force leaving. Maybe NIU tries to pull out because it's not the money they were expecting, or different things like that. And it really could just end the conference if they're not able to get anything. Now, again, that's worst case scenario. In all likelihood, these conferences are probably going to settle. That's what happens in most of these cases. A lot of them don't end up going to trial. The question is how much they're going to settle at. The problem is both teams have tied up so much money in different places that it's going to be really hard to settle and get a number that will work for both sides, because the Mountain West has spent a lot of money that they think they're getting, and if they want to keep the things the way it's going, they have to have that money. And the Pac-12 wants to keep continuing to grow and be able to become bigger, badder, and they don't want to give up any of their money if they don't have to. And I think they're willing to go as far as they can take them, be able to get the whole thing just dismissed with the poaching penalties. But I think this really puts a lot of pressure on the Mountain West, because I feel like if things go bad in court for them, if it goes all the way to court and things go bad in court for them, that really could affect their conference, and in the end could really just kill the conference. And so I think that puts a lot of pressure on the Mountain West, to the fact that this has went to the next step and is getting closer to trial. Now, obviously, we'll have to go to discovery and see what we find out. We'll have to see how good each lawyers are on each side. The Pac-12 lawyers have a pretty good track record, so we'll see if they can keep that going or not. But you never know until something goes to trial, because sometimes it just depends on your judge or jury or different things like that too. So the thing is, like, are you really willing to take that risk and to roll the dice, or are you gonna just be a little uncomfortable with a little less money than you're expecting and try to make it work? Honestly, I hope both conferences are able to stay afloat and they're able to make something that works, because I like having the option of having two conferences to watch out in the West. Like, I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but I think it really gives an opportunity to get maybe multiple people in the playoffs, or a chance to get into the playoffs, and a chance for teams to like really shine, and not have to have everyone just pull each other down. When you're in a big conference, that can happen a lot, and it's just really hard for some of these teams to like really rise. And when you're in these smaller conferences, I feel like it's a lot easier for teams to rise and fall until you're able to really see if you can get some of these other teams that have really struggled the last like 10, 15, 20, maybe even 50 years, to really see if they can rise to the top and get a chance to maybe get a few wins under their belt and get some momentum going. Because something that I really want is for the West to have really good football, and I don't want them both just tear each other down, and to be able to make it so that way no one gets good football, because we already lost the Pac-12, the original Pac-12, and now the Mountain West and Pac-12 are splitting, and it looks like they're trying to tear each other down. I just want to have some like one or two good conferences out in the West, and have some really good football out in the West, and be able to make sure that it's relevant. And so I hope there is a way for us to be able to get past this, where we can have a lot of good football out here on the West, because right now it really is like an East Coast dominated sport. If you look at the top 25, you got Oregon right there at the top, but then you don't have any other West Coast teams until you hit more towards the bottom. And I think there's only 3 this week, with Oregon, BYU, and Arizona State. And BYU and Arizona State are at the very bottom. And so you weren't seeing that a lot when the Pac-12 was here. Now, obviously, there's a big difference between like how much money they're spending and exposure and stuff like that. But I think the more we can find a way to get the West to be able to have some good teams and get some cream to rise to the top, the better it is for everyone out in the West. So next steps just to really watch with this is just be able to see when discovery is scheduled. I think it was like scheduled in November, to be able to kind of set the schedule for the rest of the legal proceedings and stuff like that. And just don't expect anything to come out quick, because this can be a long drawn out process, and I don't expect any side to settle right away. I think they're just going to keep trying to go as far as they can, because both of them want to get as far as they can. So don't expect anything quick. But I thought this was important enough to be able to give an update that this is happening and we're proceeding to the next step, because if that lawsuit was dismissed, then that would just change the whole dynamic of everything instantly. But I think the way things are going, we're probably not going to have anything decided till after football starts next year, unless something dramatic changes in discovery where something big comes out. I think they're just going to keep trying to fight tooth and nail and let the lawyers win in the end, get paid all those billable hours. But I wouldn't expect anything soon. I won't be holding your breath. So if there's any more updates, I'll make sure to bring it with you. And I'm going to make a video about the NIU money that they were promised tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. But let me know down in the comments what you think about this lawsuit, who you think might win, who you think has a better case, and what you think the best result for the Western college football as a whole would be with this lawsuit, and how we can make college football in the West the best it can be. Thank you, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe for more college football content.